Okay, I'll stop recording this.
This is a news flash.
Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi in the 6 Newsroom. We have some major breaking news for you that has come in the past few minutes. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has died after being shot in Japan earlier today. This news coming in and has been reported by multiple sources, both NHK World and apparently a close friend has also said the same, that Shinzo Abe is dead. He was shot dead earlier today by a gunman who fired 2 shots. What we know about this gunman, this suspect, he's apparently 41 years old, an ex-member of the Self-Defense Force, a local of Nara where this happened, with apparently a customised shotgun covered in duct tape. 2 shots were fired. No one appeared to be hit by the first one, and then the second one is what hit Shinzo Abe. He's died just a few minutes ago in Japan. The time approaching 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Australia. This shocking development that has come in, that Shinzo Abe has indeed died. Some awful news, and I know there's going to be a lot of reaction that's going to continue to come into this pretty extraordinary story that has broken in the past few minutes, that Shinzo Abe has died. Now, we had been covering this earlier, as I'm sure many people are aware that we're watching, and we were looking at this story, but and you're seeing vision of some of the reaction, and it's completely shocking. To have this happen. So the BBC, ABC, Japan Times, NHK, all reporting the same news. Shinzo Abe is dead. Of course, this is going to send shockwaves not just throughout Japan, but right around the world. We know the shooting already had shockwaves right throughout the world, but this is certainly a shocking development. Look, we're going to stay with this story right throughout the night, because there's going to be so much reaction to it. We stayed with it for almost 2 hours in the afternoon here, ended about 5 o'clock my time Eastern. But no, this is just a really shocking development for some people. Apologies if there's a copyright ender on your board. That should not be there. But we are definitely going to continue to monitor this. Apologies for that copyright end board. But it's certainly a completely shocking development for some. We had heard that Shinzo Abe and his condition was not good. It was grave, some described it as, and certainly just terrible overall for many people here today, and something that is as I said, going to send shockwaves right around the world. Apologies, you got that vision there now. So look, we're going to as I said, monitor this. You can imagine that the charges against the suspect are going to rise, and we are going to, as I said, continue monitoring this. Apologies, we have literally just got this news on hand. It is a completely shocking development, and we will stay with this story throughout the evening, because it's purely shocking, and I'm going to keep using that word. But again, this is an assassination. There's no other way to put it. The former Japanese Prime Minister has been assassinated today, and I don't know how else you can put it. Really, it's just a complete shock for so many people. If you have any questions about what's happening, please let us know in the live chat. We're going to continue this. Stay with us for continuing coverage, but we are going to bring in just a moment Roman McKinnon. He is our political reporter, and he's in Brisbane, but he's been following the story very, very closely. So we're going to bring in Roman in just a moment. But obviously a shocking development for so many people, and something that some people were even not suspecting that this has happened. So a real shock for many people. Roman McKinnon is with us now. Roman, good evening to you. We just got this news about 10 minutes ago. Absolutely shocking. Shinzo Abe has died.
Yeah, very sad news. Something that may have been expected, but extremely sad news tonight.
And I want to stress, because we had been saying for hours, we're not going to report this unconfirmed, but this is confirmed. We're hearing this from a bunch of sources, ABC, NHK Japan, aren't we?
Yeah, and also I saw that a Japanese official had confirmed it as well, so that's when he...
And a close friend too, as well.
So yeah, it's extremely sad, and it must be so hard for the family, and probably a long few hours, probably 6 hours or so, for the family, friends, and close people, and the nation of Japan.
Now, in the last hour, there are obviously a lot of developments. We heard the BBC was reporting that he was receiving a blood transfusion in hospital, but we've just been hearing throughout the entire time since he was shot that it's grave. We haven't really heard many better things on his condition. It just seems to be constantly it was grave. So that had been going right throughout the day. And I presume, because obviously you're a national political reporter, so I'm sure you'll be covering the reaction here at home closely, but you can imagine that Anthony Albanese will be saying something. I would initially say tomorrow, but I'll actually say tonight. I expect him to say something tonight.
Yeah, I think something tonight would be probably the most not logical, probably the most closest thing that he probably will say something tonight. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and we're covering it closely. So Shinzo Abe, can we just go through what's happened again before? So this happened earlier today. Excuse me, you probably just got a notification there. Excuse me for that. But this happened earlier today, and this has just continued to dominate social media, hasn't it? There's just been non-stop comments and reaction to this from not only Japan, but obviously right around the world.
Yeah, most definitely. So, former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, I tweeted this about an hour ago. It says, is in a grave condition. Now we can update that to has unfortunately passed away after being shot in Nora. That's, I think, just east of Osaka in Japan, if you're familiar with that. 2 shots were fired from a homemade shotgun wrapped in duct tape to disguise it. The gunman was aged 42 and has been charged with attempted murder. Again, we can update that to murder. So, and the gunman, speaking to investigators, said he was, quote, unhappy with him and, quote, wanted to kill, end quote, him, and referring to Shinzo Abe there. Japan, we've spoken about this a bit. Japan has very strict gun control laws, with the last attack on a prime minister being over 90 years ago. Yes, 90. So, yeah, it was very sad, and I think, unfortunately, it wasn't looking positive since the shot was fired, really, and he was unconscious, I think. Yeah,
and the other thing I'd say is that I think we have to stress the words we're using here. He has been assassinated. There is no not blunt way to put it. There's no softening it, cushioning it. he has been assassinated. A former Japanese Prime Minister, former, as in very recently former, 2020, still in public life, still active, while campaigning for a candidate, has been assassinated in the middle of a street in a Japanese city. I mean, that is just an extraordinary thing to say. But something that is going to send shockwaves right throughout Japan, and I imagine around the world in some regards, because it's definitely going to have a long-lasting impact for some people. It's it's confirmed now. It's on every news outlet you can imagine here, and it's being discussed right throughout the globe. I imagine we could get a statement from a couple of people.
Yep.
Now, I would say that some of the people we could get reaction from former US President Donald Trump, who obviously met him a few times. I'm sure, well, I don't think he met him, he might have actually, as vice president, I'm not sure exactly, but Joe Biden, the current president, because obviously they have a huge relationship with Japan, so certainly going to see a lot of impact from this. Roman, we're going to follow this on social media. We might come back to you later. We'll leave it there, though. Roman McKinnon joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
Roman McKinnon there, our political reporter. Look, in a moment, we're also going to bring in Daniel Pizarro, journalist who we've been speaking to for about 48 hours on two different issues now. And I'm sure he'll have a lot of insight on this, but again, we remind you, if you've got any questions on this story, please let us know in the live chat. We do our best to answer this to you. It's a huge breaking story, so obviously there's still a lot we don't know, but there's a lot that we may know now. Daniel Pizarro is with us now. Daniel, good evening to you. Grave news, it's just come in 10 minutes ago. He has died.
Yes, unfortunately that has been confirmed. Shinzo Abe, one of Japan's longest-serving post-war prime ministers, has been declared dead hours after he was shot while campaigning in the city of Nara. So this has been an absolute devastating day for the people of Japan, who rarely see anything like this. I think the last time there was a political assassination was in 1960. That's how long it was. It's an absolute tragedy. And we have to use that word too. We can't, go around it. It's an assassination of a former prime minister. I mean, it's just saying that is an extraordinary thing to say. Now, we obviously saw his condition. We had a few developments as we were on air earlier today, when we initially had heard that he was in a grave condition, and then we also heard that he was getting a blood transfusion, but it never seemed to get better for him, you have to say. Absolutely not. Given the number of injuries that Mr. Abe sustained after that second bullet went through his back, and we know that he was declared unresponsive and unconscious for quite a while after he went into cardiac arrest. And even though Fumio Kishida, the current Prime Minister, said that he was in a critical condition, and he was hoping and praying that doctors needed time to get their work done, unfortunately, it does seem that there was nothing that could be done. The injuries sustained were just too much for Mr. Abe. And that does mean, of course, that the suspect who was arrested, he will be now facing murder charges instead of attempted murder. And we heard only a few minutes ago, just before we got this announcement that he had died, that this suspect's house had apparently been raided by Japanese police. We heard that about 49 minutes ago. Now, obviously... No, go ahead. Well, we also have seen a couple of photos of the suspect doing more stuff like in his private life. But we also know, according to police, he had a grudge against Mr. Abe and said that he wanted him dead. So that's so we do seem to have a motive now. We don't have a lot of very specific details, but we do seem to have a deliberate motive that Mr. Abe
A basic
was
overview,
deliberately
yeah.
So this we're trying to still get a couple more personal, like specific details, but this was a deliberate attack against Mr. Abe, and it seems that this was also was motivated possibly by like politically, but also personal.
And there's one thing that there'll be obviously the immediate reaction to with tributes and thoughts for the family and all that. But in the long term, can you imagine something changing? Because people will say, oh, gun laws, but they're already, very, very strict there.
Oh, absolutely. Because Japan has very, very tight gun laws, and gun crime is very rare in Japan. And this as I remember telling you a couple of hours earlier, the suspect, he was a former Japan Self-Defense Force member. He served more than a decade ago. He allegedly used a handmade gun. So the issues that of course we've got to see is if no one was able to really know about it, say if this person wasn't on any security or intelligence radars, then it can be very hard to say, well, could this have happened? The main thing, of course, that will be looked into, especially investigation, is the security around Mr. Abe, because there was a security team around him. The Prime Minister said that they were doing their best.
You can see the footage of when they rushed the suspect too.
Exactly, and that's one of the biggest issues that that will be seen in the investigation, especially as we have to face the reality that even hindsight is 2020, but if no one knew about this suspect, if no one knew that he had any intentions against Mr. Abe, of course it's very difficult to say what could anything have been done to prevent this assassination, or until we get more details. It's a very difficult situation to really ascertain. People have said, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. If there is a possibility that almost nothing could have been done to prevent this unless the shooter had been spotted earlier, but we just don't know at the moment.
And you can imagine too a lot of world reaction from people who met him when he was president. Even maybe possibly Scott Morrison could say something. Also people like former US President Donald Trump. There's a picture going around of them today. And I mean, Joe Biden, I don't know if he met him while he was vice president, but obviously Japan being a huge partner in the Pacific to the US, you'd imagine he'd say something too. So we could be seeing in the next few hours, as the US wakes up, some reaction from pretty much all the countries you can think of here, because it is just an unthinkable thing, an assassination of a recently departed as Prime Minister, fairly recently by standards, of Japan, and a very well-known one and a very long-serving one.
Exactly, and Shinzo Abe and Joe Biden have met previously. Well, Joe Biden was vice president of the US, and of course, as president, the two have known each other for a number of years. So it's not surprising at all that we will be soon awaiting a message from President Biden regarding that. We'll be also getting more information and more responses from other government leaders. Before he was confirmed dead, Mr. Abe's family received notices from Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott. There's been a number of them that have been going around, and there is also something that I know is quite interesting that's been floating around Twitter, and that's reaction actually on Chinese social media websites like Weibo, and it looks like that there are a number of people who are there who have been actually praising the shooting quite disturbingly, and those posts have not been censored one bit by Chinese authorities. Now that's a very interesting and disturbing series of events that, given the fact that China really likes to have a very tight narrative about itself and how it affects interests across the world that these type of comments are allowed to be posted on Weibo, which is one of their biggest social media sites.
No, of course. Daniel Pizarro helping us stay informed with these extraordinary developments. Really appreciate your insight. Just finally, before we let you go, obviously, I think there is a innocent before proven guilty thing, but he's going to have those charges upgraded to murder. If found guilty, what kind of punishments could someone who's assassinated a former prime minister face?
Well, that's a very big. That's of course very hard to really say, because we've got to have. Japan does have capital punishment. It's usually in place for aggravated murder, and it does allow. There are certain aspects allowed for treason, military insubordination, kidnapping resulting in death, and that capital punishment is usually by hanging. And we know, it hasn't been it's not very common. About since 2000, there's been about 117 people in Japan that have been executed. And although it should also be pointed out that the death penalty in Japan still has a lot of support, although there are, of course, public debates about this. So this, depending on the charges that the suspect who could, if he faces some of the worst penalties possible, he could be susceptible to the death penalty if those charges are aligned with that kind of aspect. It's something that could happen.
Absolutely, and it's going to be an extraordinary one to follow. Daniel Pizarro, really appreciate your insight right throughout the day and right throughout the evening as we continue to follow this story. Journalist Dan Pizarro, thanks very much.
No problem, mate.
Daniel Pizarro there, journalist, as we continue to cover this extraordinary situation. We want to remind viewers that if you have any questions on this, please let us know in the comments section in the live chat. We're going to do our best to answer them as we follow this extraordinary breaking news story, and we're going to be following this all night because there's so much to unpack. Shinzo Abe, former Japanese Prime Minister, dead after being shot dead at a campaign rally for another candidate only a few hours ago, less than 8 hours ago. Off memory, an extraordinary situation, an extraordinary story, and a shocking death that will send shockwaves throughout Japan and really just right around the world here. We had statements from Anthony Albanese earlier, as well as Tony Abbott, Julie Bishop, Maurice Payne, Ralph Babbitt, and many others. I'm sure we'll get more comments right throughout the night as reaction floods in. But yeah, it has been confirmed dead from many sources. NHK, the BBC, the ABC, the Japan Times, citing authorities, a close friend, many sources here. But yes, Shinzo Abe has died. Shinzo Abe is dead. It's awful to say, but he has been assassinated. A former Japanese Prime Minister assassinated today at a campaign rally. That is an extraordinary thing to say. A truly extraordinary thing to say there, and we want to remind you, if you've got any questions, please let us know in the live chat. Rebecca asks, does Japan have the death penalty? Yes they do. So I'm sure we'll continue to learn more about what the reaction could be here, but it's truly shocking for many people. We saw earlier that there was video emerged that we don't have to show you here right now, but video emerged of the moment shots were fired. Now the video only shows the first shot being fired, or at least the broadcast version by NHK only shows the first shot being fired, but you can hear it. Shinzo Abe turns around, and then obviously the second shot is fired here. As I said, we're going to stay with us for this continuing coverage. What you're seeing on screen right now is the suspects being tackled earlier. This is apparently the weapon used, what has been described as a makeshift, customised, sawn-off shotgun wrapped in duct tape. These are images that have been going around in Japanese media. There's another image, a closer image there. 2 shots were fired from it. Now, the initial reports were that the first one missed anyone. No one was injured from that. The second one's what hit Abe, but there is still conflicting. The second one does appear to be the fatal blow, really. Is pretty much what we're hearing here right now tonight. 7:23 p.m. Eastern, as we continue this coverage of this extraordinary breaking news. Former Japanese Prime Minister assassinated in the city of Nara today while at a campaign event. You are seeing on your screen now some footage we brought you earlier showing the reaction that was flooding in following this extraordinary news, and you've got people, I think, either around him there or around the suspected gunman. Now we're learning more about what's happening with this gunman. I want to guess. I should say, rather, kind of recap what we know so far. 6 hours ago, we heard the initial reports that he has collapsed, bleeding. Then it was reported he was shot in the chest. Then it was reported he was gravely injured, in cardiac arrest and receiving CPR. A man was arrested soon after. He was shot in the back, it was revealed an hour later, with a shotgun, in a very bad condition and not responding. That's when we heard the current Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida would address the media. He did not appear to have any signs of life, NHK was reporting then. 4 hours ago, we saw video emerge at the moment he was shot. Then Anthony Albanese spoke. He said it was shocking news, our thoughts with his family and the people of Japan. After that, it was reported that he suffered an injury to the right side of his neck and is bleeding internally in the chest. That's when we also saw comments from UAP Senator Ralph Babbitt. He was pronounced in a critical condition by the Japanese Prime Minister soon after, about 3 hours ago. 2 hours ago, we heard he had no vital signs. 1 hour ago, more images emerged. He was receiving a blood transfusion, also reported 1 hour ago, and then after that, it's now been reported that he has died. So an extraordinary few developments there. We're going to bring in now once again Roman McKinnon, our political reporter, because we're getting more statements, and as you can imagine, there's going to be a lot of world leaders who are responding to this. So Roman McKinnon is going to discuss that with us right now, because it is truly extraordinary. So Roman, you're with us now. Good evening again to you. You've got more statements?
Yeah, so I've got one of Josh Frydenberg, of course, ex-Federal Treasurer and ex-member for Kuyong. He said, quote, "Heartbreaking news tonight with the passing of Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Japan has lost a great leader, Australia a great friend, and the world a true statement." End quote. So, I think a very meaningful, short but sharp sort of statement from Josh Frydenberg there. And I guess this is still kind of sending shockwaves around the world and still sort of sinking in.
Roman, have we heard anything from obviously the current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese? We heard him speak earlier about it, but now that he's reported dead, anything yet?
I do not believe so, but I did just see pop up that Scott Morrison has released a statement. Yeah, Anthony Albanese has not. Scott Morrison has. He says, quote, "The death of former Japanese PM Shinzo Abe is truly devastating. He possessed a great grace and strength that redefined the course of his country and our region. I will never forget the humility he displayed when he visited Darwin to lay this wreath at the cenotaph and meet with our World War II veterans. He had the capacity to bridge history and shape the future. He combined a gentle nature with a giant political statue. He will be terribly missed. Vow, my dear friend Shinzo. Love to Aiki Abe and the people of Japan. We share in your awful grief."
Scott Morrison there. Yeah,
that was about... Sorry, you go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that was about 10 minutes ago. A very graceful statement there by former Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
Yeah, look, we're getting some questions in the chat, and please continue to ask them. We're going to do our best to answer them and unpack what has happened here. NeoGeo79 asks, what was the speech the PM was the PM was giving about? What was it about? I presume we're referring to the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe there. It was a campaign rally because there's actually elections in Japan for the upper house there on Sunday. Now, I discussed it with Dan Pizarro earlier. You have to wonder what's going to happen because could it delay it after these pretty extraordinary circumstances? There was already talk that it'd be delayed after he was shot alone, but now that he's died, it's absolutely a possibility. So this is a story we're going to continue to monitor. Roman, stay with us on the line. We're going to take a quick break for a moment, but stay with us on the line. Roman, stay with us on the line, viewers, and we'll be back in a moment with some more coverage of this extraordinary situation. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has died. Anthony Albanese releasing a statement. We'll get to that right after this break. Stay with us.
This is a news flash.
Hello again, I'm Leonardo Puglisi, 7:30 PM Eastern Standard Time. Roman McKinnon, our political reporter, still with us. You're watching this coverage of the assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Roman, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has just released a statement. What does it say?
Yeah, so just as I was speaking about Anthony Albanese's statement, Scott Morrison's statement, Anthony Albanese released a statement. So, quote, "The tragic death of former Japanese Prime Minister Abe Shinzo is devastating news. On behalf of the Australian government and people, we offer our deepest sympathies and condolences to Mrs. Abe and Mr. Abe's family and friends, and to the people of Japan. Mr. Abe was one of Australia's closest friends on the world stage. It was his vision that helped elevate a bilateral relationship to a special strategic partnership in 2014. Under his leadership, Japan emerged as one of Australia's most like-minded partners in Asia, a legacy that endures today. Mr. Abe was a leader in the Indo-Pacific, championing a vision of a free and open region. The Quad and the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership are in many ways the results of his diplomatic leadership. Mr. Abe was also a giant on the world stage, a leader in the G7, the G20 and the United Nations. His legacy was one of global impact and a profound and positive one for Australia. Just a few days after being sworn in as Prime Minister, I had the privilege of travelling to Japan for the Quad meeting. In many ways, this grouping is a legacy of Mr. Abe's diplomatic activism. Mr. Abe was the longest-serving Prime Minister in Japanese history. He will be greatly missed." End quote.
Anthony Albanese there, the Prime Minister, making a statement on the death of Shinzo Abe. We know he had spoken earlier about this, but obviously now that he has died, we're hearing that statement. I'm sure we'll hear more from him. I suspect tomorrow, obviously being a Friday night, you don't expect him to hold a some kind of a press conference or has any media interviews, but I'm sure we'll hear
Not
him.
at all, no.
I'm sure we'll hear him sometime tomorrow as this reaction continues to come in, because Roman, it's just extraordinary. This is again an assassination of a former prime minister, again fairly recent former prime minister. He only left in 2020. That was of course the second time he was Japanese PM. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's just
It's,
going to.
sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just going to say, yeah, this is going to continue to see reaction, and I'm sure we'll also hear more reaction from many other Australian political figures who maybe met with Mr. Abe or know him from various things. We know Julie Bishop, Maurice Payne, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, all saying things before. I highly suspect they will say something. I highly suspect they will say something now that his death has been confirmed.
Yeah, and I've also got another statement from Narendra Modi, who is the Indian Prime Minister. He said 17 minutes ago, as a mark of our deepest respect for former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, a one-day national mourning shall be observed on 9th of July 2022. So tomorrow in India, a national day of mourning. That's very important. How much of a figure Abe Shinzo was over there.
And it's again quite an extraordinary situation. That this is, or when this is with this happening, I should say rather. And we are going to, as I said, see this reaction continue to flood in on social media. Roman, I imagine still a lot of reaction coming in tonight.
Yep. Yeah, most definitely. I think it's still sinking in. I think we might talk about this for the next hour or two, but it's still really sinking in. Like, he was assassinated. I have to look. When was the last time a prime minister or president was
even just
assassinated?
even a former one? You know, it's not something you hear about any country, let alone Japan. And as we've been talking about, they've got these really strict gun control rules.
Yeah, like it. But I mentioned, I heard you talking about before about solutions. You know, death penalty, and sentencing and gun laws. But you know, they have the strongest, so you can't really upgrade or make them more stricter, because they're still very strict.
Exactly, and yeah, it's like if we had another mass shooting here, and I know there's been a couple since Port Arthur, but like there's not much you can really do in terms of changing anything when you've already got what some say is perfect or is just the necessary rules that some might have. So that's the situation here in Australia. Now, obviously, without going over the same things over and over again, we'll continue to monitor this. But this has happened, I guess, so fast. I mean, relatively fast. In this 6-ish hour period, we've gone from former Japanese PM collapses while bleeding with gunshot heard to former Japanese Prime Minister assassinated. I mean, that's just an extraordinary thing to happen on a Friday, a couple of days before their upper house election that he was again campaigning for. That's why he was out there speaking.
Yeah, and now you have to sort of think. Well, I think they probably would delay this upper house election. I saw before that the Liberal Democrats, as a sign of respect,
and that's what we might add. Sorry to interrupt. I was
yeah.
just going to say that's the Japanese Liberal Democrats. That's not our Liberal Democrats. That is the Japanese Liberal Democrats. Their Conservative Party. That is Abe's party. But please go on.
Yeah, sorry. So the Japanese Liberal Democrats will stop campaigning for the rest of the day, and I think, or India, of course, a day of mourning, and I think there might that it has to be delayed. Like, I don't see it still being.
The only thing is,
this
yeah, I
Sunday or
mean,
something.
I know I think it may have been Thailand or Taiwan, I forget, but that Daniel Pizarro was talking about in our earlier broadcast, how someone was shot there, but they didn't delay it because they weren't a candidate. Now that this person, he was campaigning, former Prime Minister, very significant figure, and it's also only 2 days before, and might I add, he has died, a delay is absolutely possible. That is all speculation, though. Nothing is confirmed there, but it's absolutely a possibility. Now, what we want to stress is that there were earlier reports that he had died, straight after this gunshot. We don't know. He was receiving a blood transfusion as soon as around an hour ago. We might add here. So draw your own conclusions from that, but he certainly, it was on the media death. There's photos of him that we are not showing, might we add, on this broadcast, that did show him, on the ground bleeding as that suspect was apprehended. So quite an extraordinary day there, Roman. We'll leave it there with you. We'll probably cross back to you if we've got any further developments, but right now we just have to say, wow, it's quite shocking. I'm sure we'll get you to maybe cover this on our Sunday night bulletin as Fallout continues from there, but we'll speak to you about that later. Roman McKinnon, political reporter, he's in Brisbane tonight following this story. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leo.
Roman McKinnon there, joining us live from Brisbane. Okay, we're going to take a brief break. This coverage will continue, this live stream will continue. But stay with us as we continue this coverage. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe assassinated on the streets of Nara in Japan, that's near Osaka. Reaction continuing to flood in. We'll have plenty more right after this brief break. Stay with us.
This is a news flash.
Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for sticking with us as we continue our coverage of this extraordinary story, the assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And as I said, extraordinary day. There's not many words to describe it, because this was a shock thing that happened. I want to bring you the latest that we know on the suspect now. He's 41 years old, an ex-member of the Self-Defense Force. Now, he's a local of Nara City, which is where this city happened. He apparently had a customized sawn-off shotgun that, as you can see in images that'll come around on this loop we're playing, and then also that has been seen earlier, an ex-member of the Self-Defense Force. Now, that customized shotgun had duct tape all over it. I think you can see it in his hand there, yeah, on the right of the screen. Now, he dropped that, he was apprehended. 2 shots were fired. The second one appeared to be the fatal blow. First one, there was some somewhat conflicting reports that it hit no one, but obviously the second one is definitely the one where it's really happened. So yeah, Shinzo Abe has died, 67 years old, assassinated. He is Japan's longest serving prime minister, according to the New York Times. Served 2 terms, 2006 to 2007, 2012 to 2020. Now, he resigned in 2020 because of ill health. I was covering that back when it happened. But no, now he has died. He has been assassinated. There's really no other words to accurately describe it here, because it's factual. He has been assassinated. Again, you're seeing those images of that's apparently makeshift sawn-off shotgun. It's covered in duct tape. This really bizarre thing that was apparently used to kill Mr. Abe, the former Japanese Prime Minister. Now, if you've got any questions on what this means, if you've got any questions on who has responded, please let us know in the live chat. We are going to continue monitoring this for you. We know Anthony Albanese has already released a statement. The Prime Minister here that we had covered by Roman McKinnon, our political reporter. He was covering that only a few minutes ago, but absolutely a shocking development. Now I'm going to read the statement again from Anthony Albanese. He says, shocked and saddened by the tragic death of former Japanese Prime Minister Abe Shinzo. Says it's devastating news. Mr. Abe was one of Australia's closest friends on the world stage. It was his vision that helped elevate our bilateral relationship to a special strategic partnership in 2014. Under his leadership, Japan emerged as one of Australia's closest and most like-minded partners in Asia. The legacy that endures today. He goes on to say that just a few days after being sworn in as Prime Minister, I had the privilege of travelling to Japan for the Quad meeting. In many ways, this grouping is a legacy of Mr. Abe's diplomatic activism. Abe was the longest-serving Prime Minister in Japanese history. He'll be greatly missed. That's the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, releasing a statement only a few minutes ago. We had heard from him earlier in the day, but we are going to stick with this coverage, at least for now, because it's a truly extraordinary story, and one that's going to continue to have ramifications. It's when a former Prime Minister is assassinated in a country that is known around the globe, that has relationships with so many major countries, that has been in office for so long. When he was in office, a lot is going to be said about this. Now, we were live, of course, earlier when the news came in that he was assassinated, or excuse me, when the news came in that he had been shot, collapsed misleading, but now that it has been confirmed, this is going to see reaction right around the globe, really. There is going to be this continued reaction, because so many people are going to say quite a lot. So, look, for a bit of background on Shinzo Abe, as we've kind of been talking about earlier, he is Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister, President of the Liberal Democratic Party as well. Now he was Prime Minister from 2006 to 2007, and then 2012 until 2020. He was born in 1957. He's 67 years old, longest serving Prime Minister in Japanese history. At different times, he was the Chief Cabinet Secretary and later, very briefly, the Leader of the Opposition. And he resigned in 2020 as his second stint as Prime Minister due to ill health. But he had been in office, from what I understand, for since 1993. Which is obviously quite a while, and he was also in office, I believe, in 2021 in Parliament, but no, he until 2021, I should say, but no, he had been in office for a good he'd been in office since 1993, so for a good while there, and again, his first term as Prime Minister was obviously a lot shorter than his second term being one of the longest, 2012 to 2014. Now, his death is going to see continuing shockwaves right around the world. What we're hearing about the attacker is that he hated Abe, and he's gone off and he shot him here. Now, that is the only motive we've heard from multiple sources. In terms of specifics, we don't know. We do not have those specifics there. So we'll continue to try to bring you those developments. Sorry if I said 1957, I meant 1954. He was 67, but he was born in 1954. So, again, reaction coming in. We're probably going to hear something from US President Joe Biden, even possibly former US President Donald Trump, who obviously spoke to or met with Mr. Abe during his presidency, his 4 years as president. But quite honestly, there's not much you can say here other than shock, because it's not something that anyone was expecting. It's not something that anyone thought would be happening, especially in a country that, as we mentioned before when we were talking to Dan Pizarro, Roman McKinnon and Stuart Jeffrey about this earlier, a country with such strict gun control. So, yeah, Shinzo Abe, obviously a controversial figure for some. Many people dislike him for various reasons. Many people also supported him, and that's obviously evident in the fact that he was in office for so long. But definitely a developing story, and you can see that even by you look at something like Wikipedia. They've already changed is to was on his Wikipedia page. So yeah, we're going to continue to see this reaction continue to pour in. Again, if you've got any questions about this, let us know. We're going to do our best to answer them for you throughout the night. But a story that is going to continue just to see some shocking reaction and some shock around the world, because he was, as I said, Prime Minister for so long in 2 different terms, his longest being, of course, his second term, met with so many world leaders, so many significant figures, and as Anthony Albanese put it, the legacy of the Quad, which Anthony Albanese attended with the current Japanese Prime Minister only a couple of weeks ago. I believe his first act as Prime Minister after being sworn in, Anthony Albanese there. What we want to do is kind of recap how this has happened, because obviously there's still a lot that we kind of don't know, because it's such a sudden thing. So he's died after being shot. He was reported dead around 50 minutes ago at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's here in Australia. They're an hour behind, so you can say about 6 p.m. their time. In terms of the attacker, again, a motive we don't know. All we know is he apparently hated Abe. He's 41 years old, an member of the Self-Defense Force, a local of Nara where the shooting happened. Had duct tape over a customised shotgun that we've been bringing you images of. But certainly a story that there's going to be a lot more coming out about this, and a lot more reaction too. So, Shinzo Abe, born 1954, died 2022, 67 years old, Prime Minister of Japan from 2006 to 2007, and 2012 until 2020. We're speaking in Nara City, that's near Osaka, for those of you wondering, at a campaign rally for the upper house elections, which are on Sunday. Ones that may be cancelled. He was leader of the Liberal Democratic Party over in Japan. The suspect has his house raided by police just before we had this death announcement. Abe's condition has been described as grave and critical for hours now. Blood transfusions were reported an hour or 2 hours ago, and then he was reported dead just under 1 hour ago. Excuse me. So, look, that's about where we'll leave our coverage for now. We're going to wrap this up for you as we kind of look over this this situation here. But definitely something that we are going to see more reactions to. We have more coverage of this developing live right now on social media at 6 News AE. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Again, just search 6 News AE to find us. Or you can head to our website as well. That's 6newsau.com. For now, though, in the 6 News studios on this Friday evening, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.